Hi, and welcome back to another episode of A Day in the House. I'm your host, State Representative Michael Day, and we're mixing it up a little bit this month. I'm thrilled to welcome two student leaders, one from Stoneham and one from Winchester, to join us here today. My first guest is Jeng Chou, who is a senior at Stoneham High School and president of the Student Council. The other guest is David Joseph, a senior at Winchester High School and president of the Student Council here in Winchester. David, welcome. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you both for joining me. So as I said in the beginning, this is kind of mixing it up a little bit. Normally we have folks from the community who are involved in one particular issue or one particular advocacy group. But I thought it'd be timely to have some kind of student leaders on with us and hear from a different generation that I think we too often ignore. So I'm very grateful that both of you came out to join me today. And I was hoping you could tell the viewers a little bit about what got you involved in student government and how you ascended to the lofty roles you both occupy now.
Sure. I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
So I started out in student council ever since my freshman year. I've been doing it. And I got involved more because ever since middle school, I was always talking to people, asking them like, hey, what do you need? What's up? Like, what's going on in your life? Just to say, and they would let me know in like the general consensus of what's going on. And just talking to, I find it really helpful and evident, like helpful for myself just to talk to more people to figure out what's going on in the school. And because of that, when I got into high school, I was like, oh, like there's an organization that when people talk to me, I can actually tell other people
Sure.
what they say. So I got involved that way, and I convinced some of my friends to do it, and we were like kind of together. We're like, let's do this. Let's go student council. And we all got in, and I think once that happened, just getting more involved and seeing like so much more behind the scenes, like, oh, like there are people actually doing things that I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
So really getting involved in student council and just caring more for people kind of brought me into student council. And then throughout the years, I'd lead different sections of student council when we have different events. And then eventually senior year or end of junior year, I decided to run for presidency, and it worked out.
Very good. How about yourself, Jeng?
A little bit different. So I started student council, but I joined student council because through elementary school and middle school, I was pretty shy. So I thought, okay, if I join student council, maybe it'll help me talk to more people, make new friends. And then when I joined freshman year, I thought, well, it'd be really interesting to keep going. So I got to organize events and help with like open house and showing kids around. That was fun.
Great. So given you kind of different arrivals here to this position that you both hold now, what do you think the answer is to the kind of age-old question of how to get young people engaged in government or in student activities? How do you, I mean, you had referenced that you were a little shy. How do you encourage students to come out of their shell and really start becoming more active in our communities?
Well, I think a lot of kids, they don't take action because sometimes they might not have enough information to form like an opinion on a certain group or club or like a political idea. So I think one good idea would be to introduce an idea to them or say like, hey, this is a interesting club that you can join, and this is what happens when you join the club, and this is what you can do in it. Then they can form an opinion on whether or not they think the club would benefit them personally, or if they can do something in the club that would benefit others.
Mm-hmm. I think, like in addition to that, telling students it's not hard to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they think it'll be like, oh, I have to I have to do all this research. I have to figure out what it is. But like you already have an opinion. It's just you have to learn how to voice it, and voicing it is where I think the people can step in, and teaching students how to voice their concerns will in turn help them get more involved into politics.
Yeah, one of the big things that I'd been pushing for that I was happy when I was growing up to have the benefit of is being taught how to think critically and being taught how to challenge authority to a certain extent, right? So you look at the American Revolution, and from kindergarten on, you're taught about the founding fathers and how great it was.
Yeah.
And then you start peeling back the onion and you realize, all right, well, there are some different things at play here, right? We've got merchants versus agrarian society. There's a lot of layers to what history really is. And I was kind of brought up in that mindset of, hey, peel us back and challenge us a little bit. What do you think on the critical thinking? Is there enough of that in school now? Is there enough of that in your everyday life? I know it's a kind of an odd question, but what's your viewpoint on that? Is there enough of it around, particularly for folks your age?
Yeah, I think in a sense it's been not lost. It's been kind of shifted in a sense because, as you said, like you would learn this in school. You learn critical thinking, like what to do, and like you would, as like you grow, you would kind of learn more and more and see like as an onion peel back the layers. Versus now it's more of, I guess now it's more of like you have to do it yourself, but because you're doing it yourself, you can kind of like get it quicker, get it more, and I think I think it'll take time for people to do that, but for the most part, it's no longer like in school like learning how to do it. It's just more of like a self-driven thing.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, kind of. I feel like when you're in school, it's very structured. Teachers tell you, you know, this is how you're going to set this up. You're going to do your homework assignment this way. However, I do think that the curriculum, like, for instance, with English class, a lot of the books that we read, they do bring up topics that make kids go, oh, you know,
Yeah,
we can challenge
that's true.
authority,
Yeah.
or, you know, oh, we need to make this better for certain people who are struggling with certain things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering if it's a cyclical thing as well,
Mhm.
right? Because you had the 1940s and 50s where people did what they were told. And then the 60s, boom, everything blew up. 60s and 70s, and there were challenges to authority left and right. And then it kind of slid back the other way, right, in the 80s and everything. And I'm just curious as to whether you think it's something that is societal, or is it something that's really driven by too much curriculum? We have too much regimentation in the schools or not?
I think it depends. I think if a student is introduced to an environment that's very strict, they might find it difficult to, you know, act in that environment, and then that'll make them want to not like rebel, but, you know, challenge themselves, challenge others to change things. And like you said, with like the decades, and I think if kids are growing up and they're told, you know, you have to do things a certain way, they're going to want to challenge that.
I think like with the culture that people bring, it adds kind of that sense of like swinging back the other way, because let's say like everyone's parents are different, and like
Yeah.
let's say your parents will tell you one thing, but then as you kind of grow up, you realize like, oh, but these kids are doing this because, and like you figure out like, oh, their parents tell them something different.
Right.
So because of that, it kind of creates that rebellious type of aspect. So I think yeah, like in a sense, it kind of shifts with the times.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not encouraging rebellion, but
Yeah,
certainly challenging authority is always a healthy thing. I used to get in trouble for it quite a bit. Read my old report cards saying you got too sharp of a tongue. But going back to this kind of regimented thought, whether we're too regimented now, you know, we're seeing the stories and we're reading the reports and the surveys from you and your peers about the level of stress in school. Always was aware that, you know, kids have their own levels of stress. I say kids for everyone. But people have their own levels of stress depending on their age. And I remember going through high school, and really at the time it was driven towards what college you're getting into, where you're going to go to school, what are your grades, which I think are common throughout the high school years. But this generation seems to be, I don't want to put a blank label on everything, but very, very hyper attuned to stress and anxiety. What do you think that's a valid point? And if so, what do we do, and what's the reasoning behind this, to your thoughts?
I think, for the most part, I would say I think the stress has always been there.
Yeah.
I think it hasn't in like rapidly grown in the last like couple of like years, couple of even I would say decade. But I think it's being more focused on, which is a good thing, because now you have people. Before you would have people, let's say, who are stressed out, but they didn't have anyone to go to. They didn't have much to turn to. Now, if someone's stressed out, there are 20 other people who are willing to care for you and willing to do something for you once you let them know that you're stressed out. So it's more of a focus now, because maybe it was like pushed off to the side or like underneath the rug, who knows. But now, since it's right out in the limelight, then it's becoming more prevalent, and because of that, there are like ways that people need to deal with it. I think it's always been the same, but now we're focusing on it more.
Yes, I agree with that. I do think a big part of the stress is maybe deadlines or the rising competition. Kids feel like, I need to get into college and I need to get into this specific college, but look how competitive it is. So they feel like if they get one bad grade, then everything's going to go downhill.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to both your points that the more we talk about this stuff, the more we get it out in the open and realize that this is nothing new.
Yeah.
It may be a different pressure point, but the anxiety and stress and mental health issues that we're facing, everyone's dealt with. And I think to your point, David, it's dead right. We haven't been talking about this stuff. It was hidden. Lock it away in the closet. Don't talk about it. Don't share it with anyone else. And I happen to think that society's moving in the right direction by talking about this.
Exactly. Yeah.
By saying, hey, we're all dealing with it. Every family has got this mental health battle to some extent. And I'm really happy to hear that you feel that there's more support out there for students to be able to come forward and talk about it and deal with it. So I want to shift gears a little bit to some issue that's been really gaining momentum, particularly in Stoneham and Winchester, but also Middlesex League and certainly in the legislature where I'm at. And that's the shifting of start times for school. Thoughts on it?
Yeah. So,
And I know
No, it's
we
okay.
were talking earlier that you aren't going to get the benefit of it, given
Yeah.
that you're graduating seniors.
so we're doing all the work for the people and the generations to come, which is a good thing.
That's great.
Which is a good thing. Yeah. For start times, we even had a discussion yesterday about it at our student council meeting.
And so
And-
let me just jump in. Maybe just set up for folks who aren't aware of what the debate is.
Oh, yes. So the debate is whether or not start times will be starting for all Middlesex League schools at currently it starts at 7:45,
Yep.
and it should be moved to 8:30, I think, or somewhere close to that. And because they say the science behind it proves that students aren't getting enough sleep, they're working late into the night, and just the biology of like a teenager, like their mental clock isn't awake fully until around 8 o'clock in the morning. So, and if school's starting at 7:45, you're waking up earlier before that. If you have to finish homework before, like there's earlier, you can always push it earlier and earlier to wake up. So giving students that extra hour of sleep, then that just provides them with a lot more time to get things done and all that. I think that it's a good thing. I think that change is always hard. Change is always hard. I think for this to happen well, it's going to take a while, but it's going to be, people will see the results and they'll understand why it's happening. Because students will more or less go to sleep, in my opinion at least, students will more or less go to sleep at the same time, regardless of when school starts. If they go to sleep now at 11:30, let's say, whether school starts at 7:30 or 8:30, they're going to be going to sleep at 11:30. So then when it gets pushed back, they get that extra hour of sleep, thus they're able to focus more on school, be more attentive, which actually might help them finish their homework sooner, so then they get more sleep, even more sleep, which
Sure.
is beneficial.
What do you think?
I think it's a good thing if they're thinking about moving the time back because, like David said, kids are staying up pretty late. Like through high school, I've been going to sleep later and later. And it's harder to get work done. I think that an extra hour of sleep would definitely benefit kids. Although, personally, I'd rather start early, end early.
Early bird? Yeah. Let me ask you, Jeng, on the issue of staying up later and later. That's nothing new. What I do think is new is the availability of the 24/7 technology to students, right? I mean, I had the manual typewriter, and that was about it. And rabbit ears on my TV, I'd have to tune it like a radio to get to certain things. But technology has advanced leaps and bounds in the last 10 years, and you're all the kind of generation that we're looking to frankly teach us how to use it and teach us how to behave on it. But can you talk a little bit about the challenges of that technology as well, the kind of double side of that sword?
Yeah, so like social media it's great. You get to share, all these fun things, like look where I went this weekend or all like the holidays and stuff. But I feel like kids need to be careful. Not just kids, adults and kids, they need to be careful what they put online because, not just because identity theft is a thing, but there's the topic of cyberbullying and that can be very harmful. But definitely social media is great for being able to share things quickly and it connects people globally. So I can send my cousin a message and she'd get it all the way from across the world.
Yeah. So on that, the interconnectedness now, one of the things that I've been talking about with others is that we're more interconnected than we have ever been. But at the same time, people are afraid to almost have interpersonal interactions,
Yeah.
right? They're afraid to pick up the phone or, God forbid, go up and introduce themselves to somebody. Do you find that, or is that cranky old man talking?
So I definitely see that in a sense because, like over time, like not even students, just people in general, they're able to use the computer as like a shield.
Mhm.
And now that you have that shield, one, you're able to kind of hide behind it at a time. So like rather than going to meet, as you said, rather than going to meet someone, you can just go like, oh, I can just message them and hopefully they'll respond. But you kind of lose that direct sense of person to person, like the serious connection that you build, I think, when you're directly in contact with the person versus over the internet. And I think, and at times that can be good. Like social media can always be good because if I need to talk to someone far out and wide, or if I need to talk to a lot of people at one time and I'm not physically with them, then yeah, of course, like social media is like perfect for that. But when you need it to be a means to build a relationship or to build like something substantial in a sense, I think you in due time you'll have to supplement that with person-to-person interaction.
So how do we correct that that trend? How do we, we've gravitated towards this, as you said, hiding behind the computer, and you've seen, to your point, Jeng, there's a lot of cyberbullying going on. Adults, children, it's across the board. If you look at our Facebook pages, these community pages, and it's shocking to see what some so-called adults are posting up there, and sophomoric, I think, at best. How do you start addressing that? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I think people don't realize how much damage they can do because they can hide behind a screen. I think if it's made more obvious how much harm cyberbullying does to people and how much your words do affect people, even though it's coming from a screen, people will be more cautious of what they say online. They'll think before they type and send.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we were talking before the show about how older generations need to look to you to kind of show us how the way should work on social media, things like that. And I think that your generation is far more attuned to that reality, right? That you really can cause harm to individuals. Mm-hmm. Do you find that it's kind of a tricky question, that your peers get that, or is it really scattershot as to who gets it or not?
I definitely think, or at least my peers understand completely. I would say, even now, the younger the kids are, the more, and the quicker they understand everything about social media. Everything just makes sense. Like, I would watch a kid just like 8 years old, just like typing away on his iPad, but he knows
my
exactly.
4-year-old's teaching me how to use tablets.
Exactly.
I don't know what I'm doing on them.
So they know what they're doing, and because they know what they're doing, they know what not to do.
Yeah.
They learn it hand in hand. It's not like you learn one half without the other. So because of that, we're kind of the first generation to be brought up in this sense of knowing what to do and what not to do on technology. But you always have those who are either older than us and don't have that experience of growing up with it. So they use it, or they have used it as things of like pleasure in the past, to use just texting with your friends, using that in a sense. So by teaching them, or maybe not even teaching, just showing them what we do and what we don't do, just like how we go about it, I think they'll gain an understanding of, oh, this isn't right, this is right, or like, oh, I could do this instead of that, because there's just a lot of like fine tuning that, like, when you post anything online or something, that it needs to be said properly, or it needs to be like done in the right sense. But because of that, you can really go about and offend someone. Again, you can really offend someone without knowing it, or you can offend someone with intent. So people are able to kind of see that now. Because you're able to, oh, like, I recognize that this is something not good, and because of that, you don't just leave it alone. You have to kind of bring it up and be like, this can't happen again. Therefore, like, teaching people what to do and what not to do is what's the next step.
So on that point too, you're hearing a lot of this kind of really I think, bad rhetoric on the political stage, on societal stages. You get terms like snowflake, which are thrown around now. And what you're hearing a lot of is, folks pointing at your generation and saying, it's either politically correct, run amok, or it's oversensitivity. When you hear things like, new words come into our lexicon that my generation's never heard, trigger, right? Different terminology for how to describe different groups or preferences. What's your answer to that? Speaking as spokespeople for your generation, how do you answer that kind of criticism from an older group?
Okay, I think one point is our generation is going through different things than previous generations and different things than what future generations will go through. So I think everyone needs to be mindful that, yes, our generation might be introducing a lot of new words. However, we're going through a lot of different things. So, like trigger, I think one big criticism is, kids are too sensitive nowadays. But I think a big part of that is just that kids are now telling people when they're feeling stressed or when they're feeling sad. They're telling people when they think they need help, and I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I see it as we are we're the forefront of this technology age, like this new generation. We're bound to make mistakes, all of us, including because it's the first batch in a sense that's going through. But because of that, it opens up this whole other side that the people before us didn't have. So, while we're still figuring things out, in a sense, this wave of kind of new terminology that you're talking about, people you're oversensitive, or everyone, anything you say just is completely incorrect or completely correct. There's in my opinion at least, I think there needs to be a new sense of understanding what people are saying and what they mean, because those two things have kind of been diverging, what someone's saying versus what they mean, and connecting the two can sometimes get harder and harder, because they can post something and it'll sound completely insulting to one person, but when that person who posted it reads it, it makes complete sense to them. So of course you have to agree, other people have different opinions, you have to respect their opinions, but connecting what someone says and what they mean is, I think, what's going to help with that.
Yeah, and both fantastic responses. I think one of the challenges is how fast technology has advanced, right? I mean, I was literally using pencils and manual typewriters until college, and suddenly, you're on your smartphones, and do you even do you written tests anymore in the schools?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right, but it's that type. How far it's come and how fast it's come, that I think have kind of set some of the older generation. And I put myself in that category. I'm 44, so to you, I'm ancient. But it's knocked people back on their hind quarters a little bit to say, slow down. Everything's slow down. But to your point, Jeng, when I was growing up, there are words that were used callously that you're horrified by now. I heard my grandparents using terminology. I said, what is this all about? Mm-hmm. And even now, as our terminology changes, my children are saying, Dad, that's not acceptable. You can't use that type of terminology. And I think you're seeing a lot of struggle, as you do with every generation, of, well, what do they know? But I think that, as you two have shown very well today here, we've got a lot to learn from you as well. And I think we're in fantastic hands with the two of you as spokespeople for our respective high schools. So I want to just kind of start to close up, but I want to know what the plans are. You're two both very well thought out and very astute individuals with bright futures from where I can tell. So what is in the future for you? What are your hopes in the future?
Thank you. For me, I would say, so definitely college coming out of this. What college yet? We are not certain.
Good.
Early applications have been sent, and then I think maybe a second round will be happening depending on that. But college after this, and then graduate school, and then ideally a profession where, of course, first things first, I want to be happy no matter what. So whatever I do, making sure I'm happy throughout it. And I'm still deciding between whether going for business or whether going for medicine, and or maybe combining the two, or like technology, or like something with there. But I think what, like, my goal for myself is every field or every aspect I want to be able to take something away from. So like for technology, I want to be able to take something away from that. For like language, something I can take and I can use for my own character, just so that let's say you forget, like, because once you leave high school, let's say you forget 85% of, or you don't like actively remember 85% of what you once learned in high school. But I want to be able to take that 15% and like internalize it and use that in my future. So wherever I see myself going, and still not completely sure.
No, you shouldn't be.
I want to be able to use what I've learned in the past from all different fields to help me wherever I go.
Great perspective. How about you, Jeng?
Yeah, college, definitely in the future. Hopefully somewhere in the Boston area.
Oh yeah, me too.
I thought about medicine, but I'm hoping to get a degree in computer science, and then hopefully get a job where I don't have to sit at a desk all the time.
Yeah.
Something interesting. Yeah, I want to stay in school as long as possible.
Yeah, I've changed my careers repeatedly. I've also changed what I wanted to do repeatedly. So take that perspective forward and just say, wherever my interests lead me, I'm going to go. I think is a great way to approach your education as well as future plans. I think you both clearly have your heads screwed on right. Let me ask you one last question, which is the softest one of all. How do we keep you and your generation engaged, and how do we promote civic engagement beyond the classrooms? How do we keep you involved in the community and pulling us forward? Either one of you want to start?
Yeah.
With the easy one, right? The age-old question.
I think showing students or showing kids our age that there's something worth like putting their effort into in the community, or putting their effort into for civic engagement, because a lot of students will automatically go about and be like, oh, like this doesn't affect me, or like I don't need to do anything here, versus if they see, like completely out of school, but like if they see someone, let's say we have the Jeng Center in Winchester, and so let's say they see like something going on at the Jeng Center that they could be a part of. If it's not actively promoted that they can be a part of it, students will be like, oh, like this doesn't affect me, like these are people at the Jeng Center. Versus once students can understand that if I do something here, this can affect other people around me positively. Mm-hmm. And once they comprehend that and they're like, oh, like maybe I should do more, because I think all people are good people. I'll say that right now, in my opinion. And they want to be able to help, and they want to be able to do something for someone else. And it's just the opportunities aren't visibly apparent. Yeah. So once that happens to a higher extent, then I think that that'll just I think it'll be an automatic switch. It wouldn't even be like over time. I think it'll be an automatic switch.
Encouraging the optimistic.
I agree. Promotion's a huge thing. Yeah. Like there are a lot of opportunities that I've missed because maybe I didn't hear about them, earlier, and then I didn't have time to sign up. Also, promotion, it can motivate kids, so they're like, oh, let's go try this new thing, and then when they try it out, they can feel like, oh, I've just done a great thing, like community service, I've helped people, or it can help them decide what they want to do in the future. So motivation, promotion, and also being good role models. Mm-hmm. So showing kids that you don't have to stay in a structured system. You can, challenge yourself, break out of that, create new ideas.
And showing them that you're not perfect. Because no one's perfect. Showing them that, mistakes are made and we learn to fix them. But because of that, we grow from them. And once people understand, I don't have to be perfect to do this, or I don't have to be perfect to do that, then I think they'll kind of find that it connects with them more, because they're like, oh, I'm not perfect too, but these people aren't perfect either, so.
Well, I think I could be a perfect role model for not being perfect and for making mistakes. But I want to thank you both sincerely for coming out. This was a great conversation.
Thank you.
David and Jeng, this has been fantastic for me to listen to you, but also to realize that our schools are in fantastic shape if these are the students who are turning out. So thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.
Great. We hear a lot about the millennial generation, loosely recognized as being born between 1977 to 1995. We'll soon hear a lot more from and about Generation Z, people born from 1996 to the present. This swath of our population is maturing in an age of tremendous technological changes and revolutionary means of communication. Gone are the days of scouring an encyclopedia for research or fiddling with my UHF dial in the hopes of tuning in the Bruins game on a black and white television. Now we can call up obscure information in seconds and can view any movie or show we want to watch at any time. These leaps in technology and communication have made our young professionals and students the most adaptable and worldly generation we've ever seen. Yet these changes have also brought unique challenges. As with just about every generation since World War II, voter turnout and civic engagement among people under 30 continues to drop. Some blame apathy or disenchantment with government as a reason. Others call it being self-centered or just lazy. I, however, think there are more factors at play. A 24-hour news cycle and constant presence and updates on social media means, for the most part, our younger generations do not have time to decompress. Tethers to smartphones or computers mean less person-to-person interactions and heightened stress around those that do occur. We, the older generations around here, must also shoulder some of the blame. Our own interactions on social media platforms like Facebook are often more immature than the postings made by teenagers. I've heard from scores of students that the actions and words of our adults in our community on social media are embarrassingly mean-spirited to the young men and women following these so-called discussion pages. We lead by example, and leadership can either inspire or discourage those watching. The current tenor of national and local politics too often devolves into petty and personal attacks, and those who sit by quietly as dialogues devolve into name-calling are just as complicit as those leading the charge into the mud pits. We are all civic leaders, whether we are elected officials, volunteers, parents, or neighbors. We have all benefited greatly by living in this area of the world at this moment in time. We all have an obligation to teach and mentor and encourage the generations that are following us that public service and civic engagement are admirable endeavors. We also have an obligation to continue to adapt and learn. While my children get a kick out of watching me load paper into a manual typewriter, I'm amazed at how proficient my 4-year-old is on technology that is entirely foreign to me. He will develop skills I could never fathom, and he and his brothers and friends will help me adjust and adapt to societal changes in the same way my sisters and brother and I help my parents. We owe it to ourselves and to society to engage with younger generations, to be open to their viewpoints, and to truly listen to their concerns and visions. We also owe our younger generations leadership that manifests itself every day and that encourages them to embrace and continue to treasure the institutions that have made this country and this state so great. I'd like to thank Jeng Chou from Stoneham High School and David Joseph from Winchester High School for joining me on today's episode. I also thank the tremendous staff and crew here at WinCam for all the work they do to make this community a better place. Special thanks go out to those who made today's episode possible, including Tyler Graham Stevens and Suzette Ferdinand. Thank you very much for watching.